All right, so let's call the meeting to order. And can we have a roll call, please?
So, Member Appel,
Here.
Member Gary,
Here.
Member Ross Stapleton Gray,
Here.
Member Zinn,
Here.
and Chair Levin.
Here. All right, thank you. Our first order of business is approving the minutes from our May 21st meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
I motion to approve the minutes for May 21st, 2019.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carried. All right. And is there any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to announcements if there are any staff and commission member announcements. All right. I think probably announcements will fall under their appropriate agenda items. And so our fifth item is presentations. Do we have presentations? It's kind of, I feel like 5 and 6 are kind of one. So we'll move on to discussion and possible action on matters related to the following items and start with the Albany Library report from Albany Library Manager Rachel Schur. If our technology is being...
I think you got it now.
Great.
It's working.
Okay.
Right. Hi.
Hi.
Are we starting, we're starting with the library report?
Library report, yeah, thank you.
Okay. Let's see. Sorry, I'm trying to get the, there it is. Okay, this is my report for many months, I suppose. Just a snapshot first of our statistics. This is from our quarterly report, so it's only until June. As you can see, the number of visitors and programs has increased a lot. Circulation is down, but I think that's pretty common now that we have a lot of access to digital media. We have particularly a lot more programming for teens. We went from 10 programs the quarter last year to 29 this year. Staffing changes. We've got a lot of new staff at Albany and some staff changes. It's really exciting because we're almost fully staffed now. We only have 2 vacant positions at the moment, so we're in pretty good shape, especially compared to other libraries, not just in Alameda County, but in general. Speaking from experience, this is a rare opportunity. So we have a new page, Lee Gossett. He's never worked in libraries before. He's fitting in really well and doing a really good job. Florence was formerly working in our Dublin location, and she was promoted to library clerk from page position, and she's now at Albany. We also had a transfer from another location for a library page, Jose. And finally, our teen librarian, Vivian, has transferred to a new position as a children's librarian. We expect, though, to fill the vacancy for the teen librarian pretty soon. And has a lot of new ideas for adding more children's programming and assisting the programming that we already have as well. The library is going to play a big part in the census and helping people participate in the census and also campaigning and educating the public about the census. So I put this slide in here, just some quick facts. Every person not accounted for or accounted for is equivalent to about $20,000 over the course of the decade. So an undercount could also cause loss of a congressional seat. The census is online this year, so we've set aside stations that we're going to have set up in the library for people to take the census, and also a civics area that will be ongoing beyond the census. We'll have information and library materials about civics. Summer was a big deal at the library, not just summer reading, but we have a lot of summer performances. Every week we had performances, so some highlights I have here. The Vivarium came, which is right nearby in Berkeley. Cowgirl tricks, marionettes, magic shows, theater, circus performers. A lot of this was interactive. That's kids participating in jelly jam puppet time. I think they were making waves. So some other summer program highlights beyond the children's programming that we had. We had a really popular pizza party for the teens to kick off summer reading. We realized that if you give teens pizza, they'll show up. So that's what we're gonna do in the future. We had a very full room. That's this slide in the corner, upper right corner. You can see all the kids at the pizza party. We had 2 art is education. I don't know why I'm having trouble saying that. Workshops this summer. One was for adults to learn how to paint a cityscape. And the other one was, in our summer reading theme, was outer space. So families could build rocket ships out of just recycled materials. And then they had a little Polaroid camera so they could put themselves in their spaceship. And then we held a National Night Out party. I'm not sure if everyone here is familiar with National Night Out, but my understanding is the library's never participated before, and I thought it was important that we had a meeting space for people who couldn't have a block party, or, especially people on Marin Avenue. That's a busy street. They're not going to block that off. So it was a huge success. We got a visit from McGruff, the crime dog, and the police, and we had crafts and live music and games and food, and a lot of people came out. I met a lot of new people in the community. Since I'm new to the Albany Library too, it was really personally a great event for me to meet people. We also, of course, still have a very vibrant film festival. We had early and at the end of May, I think, we had this Pride Shorts night, and two of the filmmakers came and spoke afterwards. They had a Q&A, and that was a really good evening. We also had a panel discussion with women who are in local politics, including the Vice Mayor here, Peggy, about the life and legacy of Frances Perkins. We had, just last week, unexpectedly, standing room only event for the Legacy Film Festival on Aging. we were featured on NPR that day for a show, or maybe it's not NPR, maybe it's PRI. But Rose Aguilar has a talk show, and she featured one of the organizers of the film festival. We had no idea she was going to do that, but we adapted well. We did have to turn a few people away, but we got their names, and we're hoping to have the event again so that those people can get some priority seating at the next one. And then we also recently had a screening of Skatistan. Yeah, that's not even all the films that we have. I can't fit them all on one slide, but we have a really strong partnership with the film festival here. Another great program we have, a regular program, is the Brown Bag discussion series. So the image on the right there is his name's Day, and he creates these giant mandalas out of nature, temporal art, as a way to work through grief. And he came and talked about his process and showed his work. We had Dr. Lori Volin, I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. She came in and talked about the use of medical cannabis. And we recently had a local author who came in and spoke about the Berkeley family camps. And she has a book out. So doesn't seem to be advancing to the next slide. Not sure what's going on there. I'll just click on it. A few weeks ago, we had an evening with Ryan Casada. He's a trans activist and musician. He does everything: art, music, film, YouTube star, fashion model. He came out, and we had an unexpected number of younger kids and their families, and also seniors. So that was wonderful to see, because I think those two groups would probably not have an opportunity to see him. Usually he plays in clubs or big festivals, but this was much more intimate. This was some of the feedback. I don't know if you can read it, from Ryan and the people who came to the show. It was really positive. He said it was a great sound system. I can't credit the library for that. It was actually, we held it in the community center so we'd have more space, but it really was a impactful program. So, and we had, if you can see that slide on the left, lower left, the moderator for the Q&A with Ryan, his name is Jackson, and he is a recent grad of Albany High. You might know him, I don't know. And he's also leading a zine workshop, I think next month, or it might be this month. But we're trying to tie these programs together to get a little following going. Upcoming programs, we've got a lot of upcoming programs. This is just a snapshot of some highlights. Brian Copeland will be coming October 12th to perform his play, The Waiting Period. We're going to have that in the El Cerrito High School Theater. It's a much bigger theater than the Albany High School Theater, and we'll be able to fit 500 people in there. We have, next week, we're launching our Fall into Haiku, which is put on by the City of Albany's Arts Commission, and it decorates the sidewalks of Albany with original haiku by people who live and work and go to school in Albany. So we're going to have a little workshop next week and sort of launch party, and then we're going to have another party when the haikus are selected to have a reading of the haikus. Amongst other, we have a lot of other poetry events lined up too. We have a zine workshop, which I already talked about, college essay writing workshop, more brown bag speakers. The most recent one that we're going to have is from a master gardener about native plants. We had a very popular brown bag series by Bob Lewis, who talked about birds of the bay, and so he's coming back for a 5-part series since that was so popular. I guess I put the fall into haiku twice. I also put poets twice. We have 2 guest poets coming in. Evie Shockley, who is not local. We're partnering with Dominican University and Marin Poetry Society to bring her in. And we have a local poet, Judy Halepsky, who will also be doing a reading. And then we have, everyone's excited about this, Ursula Le Guin film and Q&A with the director coming up too. And that is all I have for the report. I guess I can answer questions.
Any questions?
No questions?
Actually, yeah, I'm curious, since the fines have gone away, have you noticed a change in activity at the library?
A change in like circulation?
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know if we've studied the causal effect of that.
Yeah.
If we're able to study that, I can just give you anecdotal.
Yeah.
I've noticed that by far, I've had actually 0 complaints about it. I expected there might be a few people that would be like, how is the library going to make money? But the few times that people have said, but how can I support the library? They've been fine just donating the money to the friends. So I haven't really had any complaints or issues with that. People have been pleasantly surprised. It was on our game wheel for the Solano Stroll. We had a wheel, and one of the questions was how much. I don't remember if it was how much do we charge in fines, or that we charge in fines, true or false, and almost nobody got that one right. I was really surprised. We actually have maybe not done as good a job campaigning Ben's hard work. Mostly Ben was the one who made that happen. But people were excited when they found out the answer was false.
Cool. That's good.
Yeah.
So what are we anticipating the effect on returning books promptly is going to be?
I think before this was passed, there have been a lot of studies done in a lot of libraries that it doesn't really have an impact, a noticeable impact on returns, on the rate of returns.
When I was a student at the University of Michigan, there was an expose done by the student paper because the school had a policy that said as faculty, if you turned in a list of books you wanted to keep out, you could keep them out. And there was a professor who had gotten graduate students to keep on submitting these lists and had several thousand books out
His own
permanently,
library.
just sort of a rolling
Yeah.
personal library. So,
Yeah, we still, if things aren't returned after a certain amount of time, we still have replacement fees, but I don't know, maybe you know the statistics of
I can speak to some of it, having had to have the conversation a few hundred times so far. I've intentionally avoided trying to run statistics this soon because I don't want to bias myself about the cause.
Right.
What we've noticed thus far is that Berkeley handled all the complaints for us a year and a half ago, and so we're not getting them. There was huge both positive and negative feedback when the first library in the area did it, but this year we actually were one of 7 different library systems in the Bay Area to do away with overdue fines, so it is quite the local trend. And as far as activity kind of uptick and how that looks, doing it in the summer is something that a lot of people will hear about it hopefully quickly in terms of families, but it's true, there are, I don't know, a couple 100,000 people who come to the Solano Stroll, and very few of them are users of the Alameda County Library. And so it doesn't surprise me at all that most people didn't know what our policies look like. And as for people returning their books, the studies such as they are, which generally have not been over a huge period of time, tend to show that there's not much change in human behavior whether or not there's that threat. Libraries that work with collection agencies to actually impact someone's credit score and ability to borrow money may have a little bit more of a threat in place, but we and most other libraries don't want to be that organization. And most libraries that had previously done away with fines, those practices had mostly been just for children, either for children's cards or children's materials or some combination thereof. So until recently, just maybe the last 5 years, there hasn't been kind of a library to study, at least not in a major metropolitan area. So we will be able to be at least on the leading edge of that this time.
I also want to add that it's not just the patrons who are affected by this, but the staff. We spend a lot less time
Yes.
Bargaining and dealing with the angry patrons. So I think staff is also positively affected by doing away with fines.
So, what would you say was the main motivation behind it?
I mean, I don't want to speak for you, but I think the amount of goodwill we earn outweighs the ill will from.
I think there are two main drivers of it. One is on sort of the operations side, which is that we spend way too much time and money collecting too small amount of money for it to be really worthwhile. And on the public side, goodwill is part of it, but it is an issue of equal access to libraries, that people who have trouble paying fines don't come back to the library. And people who don't have trouble paying fines end up arguing with us and having the fines removed. And so we didn't like either of those outcomes, and so the best practice wasn't sort of find a way to help people who had trouble paying. It was, let's remove that barrier entirely because it's not doing anyone any good.
I am, first of all, thank you for the report, but I'm particularly interested in the increase in the participation with the teen program. And my question is, how were you able to increase it? Are there partnerships formulated with the high school and the middle school to draw teens to the library? Just want to know what steps you took to increase that, as well as the volunteers as well. I also saw that there was a number of volunteers that increased as well.
I think we didn't have a teen librarian for a long time,
Oh.
so that is probably the biggest driving factor. But we do work with the high school and the middle school to provide programs and services that they need and are interested in, and also to advertise what we're doing. But yeah, I think it's a combination of both of those things. But probably the biggest factor is that we had a teen librarian.
Mm-hmm.
And even though she has transitioned to a children's position, she's still following up and finishing out the programs that she started. So hopefully it'll be a seamless transition when the new person comes in, and we won't have a gap in programs and services.
And what is your timeline to replace the teen librarian? Because I think the momentum is going, so we want to continue to keep that. So
Nothing's for certain, but
Okay.
I know that interviews are scheduled in October. But that doesn't mean that the person would start in October.
okay.
or that we might not be able to fill it, but I'm pretty confident that we'll fill it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Other questions? No?
All right. If there's no other questions, we'll move on to our next item, which is the Young Bequest.
Okay. Stay where I am.
Thank you.
Okay. So just a little history on the Young Bequest. We received the bequest in 2011, and a large portion of those funds were used for audio-visual upgrades in the Edith Stone Room, the meeting room in the library, as well as some programming costs and also the Tech It Out laptops. So there's right now approximately 30,000, is that right?
Yes.
Yes. So I have 3 proposals for what we might do with the rest of the funds in the bequest. The first is we need some upgrades in the children's area. The second is our library basement room could be reconfigured and some amendments and upgrades could be added to make it more usable meeting room space as well as storage. Right now it's just a storage space. And the third idea is to digitize the Albany Journal, which we have in bound editions and as microfilm. So the first idea is our children's area badly needs a makeover, and the Young Bequest could supplement redesign with furniture upgrades. And it might sound like 30,000 is a lot to spend on furniture, but library furniture is pretty expensive, so we would definitely use all of it. And the objective is to reinvent the space that we currently have, make it more engaging, playful, comfortable, flexible, intimate. This is the way it looks now. As you can see, it's not a very flexible space. There's tight spaces in the area where the books are. That furniture is not very playful or modular. This play area is kind of in an awkward spot, right outside the meeting room. It doesn't feel very intimate or separate. There's another shot of it down there in the corner. And then we have this, I don't even know albatross, I guess, of a computer station that is really not only taking up a lot of space, but it doesn't work well in space for multiple reasons, so.
It's definitely not ADA compliant.
And it's not ADA compliant. So here's some examples of things we might do with the space. Adding some color, making it more aesthetically playful and pleasing. Having, if you see in the bottom left, that furniture is modular, so it can be moved around, reconfigured easily. Adds more flexibility. Oops. What happened? A more dynamic play area for kids. That's that image in the middle. This seating with that little house sort of separates the space, makes it more intimate, and then just creative seating that kids can sit on and play in. I like those donut seats. They have those in Alameda Library, the city of Alameda. So, as I said, I would propose we would end up spending the entire $30,000. It doesn't have to necessarily just be furniture. It could be on shelving. We could have instead we could have new art on the walls. We have these panels in between the windows in the children's area. Maybe we could get the community involved in an art contest, or there are a lot of ideas. The plan would be to sort of survey the community and see what kinds of spaces they're interested in. And then while we do this, we should also consider how the teen area could fit in. So maybe purchase new furniture or amendments to make the teen area sort of part of the project. Were there questions before I move on to the next one, or?
Just a quick question. How much autonomy do you have as branch manager in selecting the design or the vendors for furniture?
I'd say I have a lot of autonomy, but not a lot of expertise. I've never remodeled a library before, or I wouldn't say remodeled, but redesigned it. So I would definitely be looking for help from other people, yeah.
Okay.
So the next idea would be our basement room, which is currently a storage space. We do have tutoring in there, one-on-one tutoring through our English Forward program, but other than that, it's not really, we can't use it as a public meeting room space or a program space because there are secure documents in there. So, including the Albany Journal. So, if we installed a door to secure the documents, and we had more flexibility with the tables and chairs that are in there, if they were lighter weight, easier to fold, move around, then we might be able to make that space available to the public to book. Because as it is, we're pretty maxed out on public meeting room space, and we can't really meet the demand from the public. I have to unfortunately turn down requests to use the public meeting room because we have programs and other people asking for it. So this is a snapshot of what it looks like right now. So that area on the right, if you can see it on the left side, it's sort of in the back there. So the door would secure that area, and then I'm recommending purchasing new furniture for the rest of it, so that, and also some aesthetic improvements, maybe some art, so it's not just a gray dark room. Yeah. So new seating and tables, I'd estimate at about 3,000. An accordion door estimate would be 12,000, and then if we added in some art, that would, I'm not sure, but we would use what we had left, I guess. Were there questions about that?
I'm just wondering, so is the accordion door like a reaction to adding public space to the basement, or would it be added anyways?
That's a hard thing to answer. It's not a reaction as much. Well, I guess it is. It's kind of both. I think it's been an idea on everyone's radar for a while, but we haven't really pushed to implement it because it's kind of expensive, and also I think the demand for space has increased. I've definitely noticed that the community center wants to use the Edith Stone room pretty much every day. We're booked every day, and since I only started 7 months ago, I don't know what it was like before, but it seems to me just in the 7 months that I've been here that the requests for the meeting space have increased. I'm not sure why, but so it's a little bit of both. I think it was an idea that's been germinating, but I think it's an idea that needs to happen either way at some point. And the third idea would be to digitize the Albany Journal. So currently the Albany Journal is on hardbound copies and a microfilm. It can only be looked at in the library, of course, because of that. They have to use our machine if they're going to look at the microfilm, or take photographs if they're looking at the hardbound copies. So there's a number of challenges to access, first of all, and the person would have to come to the library, schedule an appointment. Our staff has to have time off desk to take them downstairs and help them. And also for preservation, digitizing could help preserve the journal. As I said, we need to have staff available to help let people in the room and help them use the machine or just monitor their use. And then a few times now already since I've been here, we've had issues with our microfilm machine, so which have been fixed. We don't have an issue right now, but digitizing it and making it available online would make it, we'd have a searchable database anyone could access from our website. It protects the material collection, so of course we keep that, but we'd preserve it better if we had it available to look at digitally. And it's easier to access for people who maybe can't come to the library, fewer demands on staff, and of course it's very relevant to the local history here in Albany, so I think that would be a good project to support for the city of Albany. Setup costs are estimated at $2,500. I would recommend we buy that hard drive just as a backup. And then there's two options for scanning. So we can scan from the microfilm, which is not as expensive, but it's going to be lower quality. And we could scan from the hardbound issues. That's more expensive, but it's much higher quality. And then we have to pay for hosting so that we can make it available online. So some further considerations with that project would be we definitely already have the support of the Historical Society, and just in general conversations that I've had. I haven't had any official conversations. The bound issues, if we did do the more expensive route, they could possibly be damaged in the scanning process, which might make rebinding difficult. But as I said, I would lean towards doing that, taking that risk, because the quality would be a lot better and be easier for people to use. We have to consider the costs annually of hosting the files, so beyond what the Young Bequest would pay for. And I already said that I would recommend we purchase the hard drive in case the site ever goes down. And then the last consideration is that we might need some additional authorization from various publishers. So were there any?
Yeah, some comments on the last. I've been a friend for 30 years now with Brewster Kale, who runs the Internet Archive, and I know they do an enormous amount of work in translation of stuff into digital. The journal was, until they stopped it, the Albany Journal was a property of the Bay Area News Group, and that still exists, and the journal still exists even if it's not covering Albany, all that. So I'm sure they may or may not have an interest in what happens with it, but I'm wondering if there's some point between them wanting to monetize what they have and unlikely to do so, and the interest in someone like Brewster in just digitizing everything he can get his hands on, where for less than that you might be able to get permission from Bay Area News Group to just sort of let it go and put it out in as Creative Commons license, whatever, and have it hosted by the Internet Archive forever for free, no cost to us.
Right.
and make it accessible digitally. And I could certainly ask Brewster and Mark Graham, who runs the Wayback Machine, are both friends of mine, so I can find out if they were approached by a local municipality and a library system and et cetera, what are the odds of something different
Right.
happening?
It's a big project for them to take on, but if they want to.
But
right?
they're doing this with like
Yeah.
everything that rolls in the
Yeah,
door.
yeah.
And they have a facility up in Richmond and the archive
in San
itself in San Francisco.
Francisco,
Yeah, they have like a warehouse in Richmond. I don't know what all they're doing with what media. I know they're doing this with paper. I know they're doing this with other media like microfilm, so.
I think they do charge for the digitization, but the hosting
The hosting.
might be then, but yeah.
But if they digitize it, it would only be because they're going to make it available to everybody. So you have the conversation with the publisher and see if, between all of them, you end up with a situation where it might be a wash in costs in the now, but ever after someone else's cost of hosting, so. But I can make some inquiries and just get some feedback from them.
I have some questions about this too. So the whole time that I've lived in Albany, the journal has also covered El Cerrito.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if there's also some possibility of getting El Cerrito to share the cost of this with
Kensington.
us. And Kensington, yeah.
I think the issues we have in the library are before it was shared with El Cerrito and Kensington, so I don't know what, as a stakeholder, what they would have to gain from that, but.
Well, but it also may drive down the interest that the Bay Area News Group has of trying to squeeze any more dollars out of anybody for that.
Okay, so it's the run that you have is prior to when it was shared.
Yeah. I don't know when they started, I should find out when they started a joint.
I think it's been that way for at least the last 20 years. Okay,
Yeah.
my other next,
Probably in the I think in the 70s, that's what I'm remembering from, but I didn't look it up before I made this presentation, so.
yeah. Another question I have is, does the digitizing include doing OCR on it?
Does it have what?
Optical character recognition to make it searchable?
Yeah, I think it would be searchable, but I don't know about.
So it's not just
I've never
from-
heard about OCR, so.
Well, that's the
Yeah.
procedure or the process.
Okay.
And so for the amount that you're quoting for digitizing, is the hosting done by BMI?
Yeah, this quote is for if BMI were hosting it. Exactly.
Okay, and I have a question about the children's area upgrades.
Sure.
You mentioned that there's some other redesign of the library already in process. So I'm wondering what would be the result if we chose not to do that project? What would happen to the children's area?
I shouldn't have said it's already in process. It's on our radar as something that we want to make happen, but we don't actually have anything ordered or,
Is it funded?
not really, not yet. I mean, we have funding
Some money
sources.
in trust fund,
Yeah, we have,
that money is not absolute.
right. We have money that we can allocate for it, but we don't have a specific fund for this project. It's a project that needs to happen, so.
So this is sort of opportunistic.
Well, I mean,
with
all
this
three of
fund.
these projects are really important to the library, so one way or another, I think I'm gonna try to make them all happen. It's a matter of what we'd use the Young Bequest for.
I haven't been on the board for that long, so I'm wondering how these things compare to things that have been funded in the past. Is there, like, are these different in spirit from things that we've funded with the Young Bequest in the past? Or is this sort of the same kind of thing?
Based on what I've read in the staff reports that were previously written on this, the Young Bequest was used mostly for AV and audio upgrades to the Edith Stone Room to allow the programs to be broadcasted on KALB, Albany's local channel. So a lot of the funding has been used over the years to buy the equipment, upgrade it, and some cosmetic change a little bit the appearance of the room. And then the last big purchase was the laptop kiosk.
And if I recall correctly, I think the Young Bequest, they gave it with no strings attached, but it kind of a nod to technology and local history. But again, they left it up, you know.
And the bequest was given to the city. So what you're tasked with today, and if you want to continue on to the next meeting, is to come up with a recommendation that would go to council for their approval. So based on what you decide tonight, then probably if we need more research to be done, then staff can come back with further research on one or two or three of the projects, and then you can decide either to recommend one project, recommend all three options for council in an order of priority with your pro and con analysis for each of them. I know that council would appreciate any research done on all three and your analysis for or against the pros and cons, basically.
I would agree more research would need to be done as far as like if we can get actual bids from contractors on what the numbers would look like. I know these numbers are based on your research, but there may be ways where like we can use some of the money for a certain project and another if, based on the negotiations that we make with the contractor. So I definitely want to see what the options are, and then we can outweigh the pros and cons on what the best way to proceed in approving and making the recommendation.
I personally feel that it might be better to pick one project because it seems more appropriate for a bequest to fund one big project rather than like little amounts of money here and there. And to attach their name to it is more impactful if it's for one big upgrade or improvement.
Well, and I totally understand that. I mean, if we decide to do the renovation for the children's area, say it's $20,000, what we would do with the 10, you know what I'm saying? It's like, could that money be allocated to something else to improve something? I don't know. I'm just saying that if we have extensive bids or estimates from contractors what the actual numbers would look like, then I think we would be able to better determine on where to use the funds appropriately. That's all.
Yeah, I think all three projects, the children's area definitely would exceed $30,000. So that's why I was saying maybe one portion of a
The children,
redesign, like just furniture, just shelving, art.
Right.
One aspect of that. The other two projects I think would cost about $30,000. That's why I recommended them, based on the research and estimates that I have. Yeah.
Do you have an opinion about which of these three proposals is the most mission critical?
I think they're all mission critical. I think, though, that since the Albany Journal is specific to the city of Albany, I think that's the most exciting one to attach the name of the Young Bequest to. But that's just, I want all three projects to happen. So I would be happy with any of these three projects.
I think that in the normal course of things, the thing that's least likely to be funded is digitizing the Albany Journal. So in a way, I think that's the thing that maybe we should focus on, because we can do that more easily than probably I don't think the library really necessarily cares about that.
we didn't care about it, it wouldn't be sitting in the basement.
I think we care about it, but that is definitely specific to, that is more localized. So it's specific to the Albany Library location. And the other two improvements are more, I mean, they are specific to Albany, of course, but they are part of the broader scope of the Alameda County Library system, I guess.
But it's also true that the facility is owned by the city of Albany. Is that correct? So really, it all is Albany stuff.
That's true, yes.
Are there any other comments? It sounds like, I mean, I actually think that I'm leaning more towards the Albany Journal as well, just because I think it would be really useful to the community. It's very local. Yeah, and for a lot of the reasons you stated. But I'm wondering if the board wants to move forward either making a decision tonight or asking for more information for the next meeting.
I think I would want more information before we make a decision. I think he said he would look and see if there's other options. I mean, I just don't think we should just say, let's do it until we have outweighed our options. And then that way we can present something to the council, more thorough and research out and giving, the options and what we've considered to make the recommendation.
Has Albany done any sort of digitizing project to date, either at the library or at the Historical Society?
Recently done a digitization project for the Castro Valley Forum. That was another local project that was funded by a Friends group. We still haven't resolved what we're going to do with it, but the paper copies were deteriorating and it needs to get done.
So you guys are still working on that in Castro Valley, or?
The digitization has been done.
It's done, okay.
The ultimate hosting or how it will be provided out. And in part, that is not a consideration for you, but for us in terms of if we're doing multiple digitization projects, do we want them in one sort of ecosystem?
Right.
At the Internet Archive, or be that our own local hosting, or be that some vendor.
Or some kind of contract where there's an economy of scale, perhaps?
Yeah.
All right, so do we need a motion for this, or should we just put this on a future agenda item?
You can put it on future agenda item, but I think what needs to be decided is whether or not you want research on digitizing the Albany Journal only, or do you want further research on all three? I would think that if there is one motion to be made, is if there is one of the options that you want to move forward on with further research, maybe put that in a motion so it's captured in the minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
I would move to have more research done on the one digitizing the Albany Journal project.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Oh, some clarification on more.
On partnering with other stakeholders for hosting and quotes on different digitization vendors. Are those the two things?
I think that, yeah, that would be great, looking into the Internet Archive. Also, maybe you mentioned you have support from the Historical Society and maybe fleshing out what that looks like, as well as, since the hosting that you've researched already is an ongoing cost, maybe, I don't know how to think about how that will be paid for in the future.
And then some information on the corpus, like what year did it start and what are you looking at covering?
Also, I'm not really sure about the hosting in terms of what's included in that. Like, does that include the search interface?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
Great. Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is the Albany County Library Strategic Plan Update with Ben Gomberg, Division Director, Community Libraries.
These are brand new, and you're the first body
Oh, nice.
to receive them. So it doesn't work for the library. So what you have in your hands is the Alameda County Library Strategic Plan 2019 to 2024 Field Guide. And this is prepared for staff of the library. But as board members, we thought you would have an interest in taking a look at how we're engaging staff with this plan. Cool. So it's very much a living process at the moment. As you're flipping through, you may be getting ahead of where I'm talking, so I'll just
We'll slow down.
moving. That's all right. But this is sort of meant kind of as a workbook for staff to kind of personally engage with what these ideas are that are central to this plan, and put together by our county librarian, Cindy Chadwick, along with a team of some of our staff, particularly our graphic designers. You might be able to tell easily from this way that it is put together. So there's, a little introduction as well as a table of contents here. Moves on with this page talking about the library's new vision statement, which is lovely as 3 words, where we want to see our communities direction moving is towards this idea of kind, connected humans. Cindy's very fond of this story, describing an Instagram account that she follows and goes into detail about this this account with its million subscribers and lots of activities and excitement. And then she reminds everyone that the account doesn't belong to a person, but to an AI, and that while she's super fascinated by this concept and how our relationships are changing, that we don't provide library service for AI or robots, at least not until 2025. And she says at that point, all bets are off. So we'll come back to that. As this is in process, the page on our mission statement is more of a roadmap to developing a mission statement. The library will be having our first ever all staff day that is not on a Friday coming up next month. And the reason it not being on a Friday is significant is that about half of our employees don't work on Fridays. And so having our all staff day on a Friday meant that a large number of them, either who work other jobs or who have other responsibilities on Fridays, would not be interested in attending. So we're expecting well over 200 of our staff to attend, and part of that day will sort of be the culmination unveiling of that mission statement, which I don't actually know what it is yet. So I'm excited to see how that looks. Tomorrow morning, actually, Cindy, along with a couple of her team, will be in Albany, meeting with Rachel's staff while Rachel is with me at a different meeting. So part of this process is to actually come around personally and introduce this little booklet to each of our staff and have some conversations about what our mission could look like and how people want to interact with these ideas. So past that page, there's then one spread each on 4 different topics, and these are termed areas of exploration by the library. And this is really where we look to develop our strategic initiatives in this plan, knowing that these are core areas where our communities need to see some leadership from the library, and where internally at the library we also need to be focused. And so just kind of going through them quickly, innovation and cultivation is sort of looking at how do we birth ideas, how do we continuously look towards improvement. sort of this idea of humans work towards a desired future, and that's something unique to how we perceive innovation. And that definition is really intended to make sure that when we say the word innovation, that we are not talking about Silicon Valley, and that's very much sort of wanting to separate that world from what innovation means to a public servant and what it means to sort of people who are not in a bubble of technology. So that first one, you'll also see these little squiggle and circle on this first page. So these are the sort of graphical design ideas that our graphic artist is working with as this process is also sort of kickstarting a new branding for the library. Any of you familiar with the library's logo and previous vision statement? They're very kind of space agey. Infinite possibilities was our mission statement, and our logo sort of looked like a sun or thing like that. It's outdated. So branding is something the library staff is all pretty excited about. Even those who may not be excited about the strategic plan are like, when is our new logo showing up? So we'll be going through a process with that. That'll include a lot of steps. So this is just sort of the very beginnings of that. The second area that you've got to spread on is justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. This is something actually our HR manager added the J, both because of the library's social justice division, as well as he's a huge Star Wars nerd. And you can sort of look at the first letter of each of those words and see why he added that at the beginning. But it stuck. I think a lot of people it started to resonate with. And these concepts are, they're everywhere now. It's extremely important to libraries to reflect our communities, and that's something that historically libraries as a profession have been bad at. And so looking at, one, how we can take concrete steps towards that direction, and two, how we can look to provide opportunities in our communities for people to really to have opportunities that were lacking before. And so our move to eliminate fines is definitely something we thought very intentionally about as serving this goal. The third area is civic participation, and Cindy decided to embarrass me by attributing a quote to me that was clearly just cheating. That was not mine. It was John F. Kennedy's, but here it is. And so this, Rachel alluded to in her presentation earlier, speaks to the civics areas that we're planning to build out in the libraries, our very close involvement with the county's all in committee on the census. The cost to the county of not making sure all of our residents are counted is extreme. Just a few percent of an undercount would be pretty damaging to the social services and healthcare services that the county provides. A huge portion of that funding is federal and is based on population. So there are quite a few initiatives at the city level, at the county level, and even at the state level, where money is really being funneled in to make sure that the federal lack of attention to providing a strong count for the census is mitigated in whatever ways we can achieve. We're also already talking to the Registrar of Voters about how we might leverage more of the libraries as polling places for upcoming elections, and looking at more engagement with citizenship classes that we've been doing in different sites for a while now. So this is an area we know that libraries are one of the few government institutions that are actually still trusted, and being an entry point to other civic activities is a role that we are well suited to, and may not have a lot of other avenues for that for people in our communities. So there, and then healthy families, healthy homes, which is our fourth on this list, and this is an area that we're probably doing the most in already, but also starting the slowest to sort of reinvigorate. But really speaking to how do we support the family and how do we support people's home life. And a lot of that ties to the county's priorities in terms of work and getting people into housing, getting people health care. And so there are other county agencies who really have that work in front of them. And we see a real strong support role for the library in being the information access point for those kinds of services, as well as where we can actually directly get people connected. So that is our 4 areas, and there's a lot still to kind of discover and develop before we're ready to launch full strategic initiatives within them, but we're really excited about what the next 4 or 5 years looks like with those in mind. And then you'll see a page here, sort of a fun page of people looking for kind, connected humans, and what does that mean, and how do we actually connect that to a library. Last full page here is a little staff engagement activity people have started. So we bought T-shirts with this vision statement on them for all the staff back in May, and quite a few people took them on vacation and started taking selfies with them. So hoping to kind of continue that trend and get some interesting pictures from all over. And so this is kind of the end of that guide, and we'll sort of pick it up with the staff at these visits that Cindy and her team are doing around to all of the libraries, and then continue that conversation at our all-staff day in October, and from there, embrace the mountain of work ahead. So, any questions about what's coming with the strategic plan?
No, I just want to say it looks very nice. I like it. And thank you for sharing.
Yeah, happy to. So the staff in Albany will see this tomorrow morning. They haven't seen it yet. Okay. So don't post it online tonight.
Okay. Or Instagram, can I put it? No, just kidding.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Our next item is the Alameda County Library Advisory Commission report from Board Member Appel. Thank you.
So it was an interesting meeting the last time. We met at the Reach Ashland Youth Center, which is a facility that opened in 2012 or 2013, and it's run by youth, and it's sort of like contracts out to these separate agencies that provide different parts of their service. So there's some library services there. There's a child care center for the members of Reach. There's a recreation center run by the Deputy Sheriff's Activities League, and there's a homework center. There's a really cool art center that has, they have large format printers and 3D printing and all sorts of other materials there. And there's also a health clinic that's confidential. So these services are all contracted out to different organizations. So that's where the meeting was. So some of the things that we discussed were a proposal to the county supervisors to change the portion of the charter that talks about the composition of the Library Advisory Commission. So some of the changes included adding a member to represent a certain unincorporated area of the county called Ashland and Cherryland, decreasing the at-large members by 1, adding 2 student members, and we could solicit a student member from Albany if we want to do that. Redefining quorum as a majority of the commissioners and updating some language about material selection and facility policies. Also part of that is that the various cities that contract with the county library need to appoint both a commissioner and an alternate commissioner. So this is something that we're going to need to make a decision on. Can we do that without having that on the calendar?
Probably not. I think you probably need to put it on a next agenda.
Next agenda, okay. Some other news includes that the city of Newark is building a new civic center that includes a new library, and that's now under construction. And there's also going to be a new community center in the Cherryland section of the county that will have a satellite library. That's going to be, it's kind of an interesting model. It's going to be partially staffed. So the San Lorenzo Library will staff it some of the time, and the rest of the time they're just going to have a self-checkout system, and I think it's kind of an experiment. But I think it's a really interesting model, and it would be interesting to see if it's successful and can get repeated in other places. There was also a report about online registrations for library programs. They're now using a system for people to register, and the reason that they put this in place was to help ensure equity in accessing the programs. And it can include creating a wait list when demand looks like it's going to exceed capacity. So I think it will give the library kind of some advance notice about what's really popular, and it's like a sign that you should do more of that. So over 155,000 people attended programs in 2018, and 10% of the programs presented were given in Albany. And the only other thing I have is that Union City had a bond measure this spring that didn't pass. So the result of that is the 2-hour per week service cut. But there was some talk about maybe being able to fund those hours through other means.
Okay.
Ben, do you have anything from that? Okay.
All right, thank you for that. Our next item is the library board work plan to review the plan that was approved by the city council on June 3rd. Any comments? Any? All right. Moving on to future agenda items. I think the two things I heard are the further discussion of the Young bequest and getting an alternate for ACLAC. Is there any other future agenda item for November or beyond? All right. Our next meeting is Tuesday, November 19th, 2019, 7 p.m. here in the City Hall Council chambers. And with that, we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you.